I never thought a text message would be the catalyst that unraveled my entire marriage. My name is Sarah Miller, and 14 months ago, I was living what everyone called the LinkedIn power couple dream with my husband of 5 years, David. It's funny how one notification can shatter what you thought was real, just like that dinner reservation cancellation that appeared on my phone 30 minutes before I was supposed to meet him at Ellsworth's, Denver's most exclusive restaurant. The same moment I discovered my name had somehow appeared on his company's executive letterhead without my knowledge. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I still remember that moment with perfect clarity. It was a crisp October evening in Denver, the kind where the mountain air carries just enough chill to make you reach for a light jacket, and the downtown skyline glows with possibility against the darkening sky. I'd spent hours getting ready for our 5th anniversary dinner, the milestone that's supposed to mark when you've truly settled into your marriage. I had just finished applying my lipstick when my phone chimed with a calendar notification. Reservation at Ellsworth's, canceled. I stared at the screen, confused. David and I had booked this table 3 months in advance. He'd made such a big deal about celebrating at the same restaurant where he'd proposed 5 years earlier. I immediately called him, but the call went straight to voicemail. "Hey, I just got a cancellation notice for our reservation. What's going on? Call me back." While waiting for his response, I decided to finish the quarterly marketing reports I needed to submit the next morning. As marketing director at Altitude Creative, I'd been working on a major campaign that had the potential to transform our boutique agency into a regional powerhouse. The pitch meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon, and despite my excitement about our anniversary, I couldn't help feeling that familiar pull of professional ambition. I opened my laptop and logged into my work email, scrolling through the most recent messages when I noticed something odd. There was an email from someone at Pinnacle Financial Partners, David's company, addressed to their board of directors. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, except my name was in the subject line. Sarah Miller's proposed integration with Eastern Division. My stomach tightened. I had no connection to Pinnacle Financial. David was a senior investment advisor there, but I ran marketing campaigns for completely different clients. We had always maintained professional boundaries between our careers. I clicked on the email. What I saw made no sense at first. There was a formal letter on Pinnacle Financial letterhead with my name listed as Director of Marketing Integration, alongside David's title. The letter outlined a strategic plan for merging marketing operations across divisions. My apparent expertise highlighted as the driving force behind this initiative. There was even what appeared to be my digital signature. At the bottom, perfectly replicated from documents I'd signed. I felt like I was reading about a parallel universe where I worked with my husband, but I didn't. I never had. My phone rang, startling me so badly I nearly dropped it. It wasn't David. It was Jennifer, my closest friend since college. "Are you ready for the big anniversary dinner?" she asked, her voice bright with excitement. "I want all the details tomorrow." "The reservation was canceled," I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. "And I just found something strange. Really strange." "What do you mean canceled? David's been talking about this dinner for weeks. He even asked me what your favorite flowers were so he could have them waiting at the table." "Well, apparently things changed," I said, the knot in my stomach growing tighter. "And now I'm looking at a company letter with my name on it for a company I don't work for." "Wait, what? You mean Pinnacle? David's company?" "Yes. There's a letter here with my name, my signature. It's talking about work I've never done, meetings I've never attended." "That can't be right," Jennifer said, her tone shifting from confused to concerned. "Have you called David?" "He's not answering," I replied, scrolling further through the email thread. "And there are responses here from board members congratulating him, congratulating us, on the marketing integration plan I supposedly created. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Sarah, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but this feels off. You think? I said, attempting humor but failing. The question is, what am I supposed to do now? Wait for him to come home and explain why our anniversary dinner is canceled and why I'm suddenly an employee of his company without my knowledge. I'm coming over, Jennifer said decisively. You shouldn't be alone right now. I was about to argue but realized I didn't want to. Be alone. Okay, I agreed. But bring wine, the good stuff. While waiting for Jennifer, I kept searching through my email, looking for any other mentions of Pinnacle Financial. I found nothing, which somehow made the single email with the letterhead even more disturbing. I changed out of my anniversary dinner dress, a deep burgundy number I'd splurged on specifically for the occasion, and into jeans and a sweater. The transformation felt symbolic, like I was shedding the person I thought I was supposed to be tonight. Jennifer arrived 40 minutes later with 2 bottles of wine and a fierce expression that said she was ready for battle. Have you heard from him? She asked as she handed me the wine and gave me a tight hug. Nothing. Not a text. Not a call. I led her into our downtown condo, with its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city I usually loved. Tonight, the sparkling lights just reminded me of how appearances can be deceiving. Beautiful from a distance, but up close, just artificial brightness. Jennifer poured us each a generous glass of wine. Talk me through exactly what you found. I pulled up the email on my laptop and turned the screen toward her. Jennifer had worked in corporate law before switching to nonprofit work, and I valued her analytical mind. She read through the email carefully, her frown deepening. This is elaborate. This isn't just your name mentioned casually. This is a fully developed proposal that would have taken weeks to create. And that's definitely your signature. A signature I never gave, I clarified, sipping my wine. The board members' responses, they all seem to know about your involvement already. Look at this one. Thrilled to finally bring Sarah's expertise in-house after all these years of hearing about her success. They talk about you like you've been discussed in their meetings before. I hadn't noticed that detail, and it made everything feel even more unsettling. But why? Why would David put my name on company documents? What could he possibly gain from pretending I work there in some capacity? Jennifer didn't answer immediately, which I knew meant she was considering scenarios she didn't want to voice. Too quickly. The most obvious explanation is that he's using your reputation to bolster something at work, she finally said. You've won regional marketing awards. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Your campaigns get attention. Having your name attached to a proposal gives it credibility. But that's fraud, I stammered. He's literally forging my signature and misrepresenting my professional involvement. Yes, Jennifer agreed, quietly. It is. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what this might mean settling over us. I thought about my relationship with David, trying to identify moments that might have foreshadowed something like this. We'd met 6 years ago at a charity gala in downtown Denver. I was there representing Altitude Creative, managing the event marketing. David was there as Pinnacle Financial was a major donor. He approached me after my brief speech thanking the sponsors, his interest seemingly piqued by my confidence at the podium. That was impressive, he'd said, introducing himself. Most people get nervous addressing rooms full of wealthy potential clients. I find it helps to remember that everyone, wealthy or not, responds to authentic storytelling, I'd replied. And I believe in the story I'm telling. His smile had been approving, his blue eyes warm with admiration rather than the intimidation I sometimes faced from men in finance. A principled approach, refreshing in marketing. That initial conversation had flowed effortlessly from professional respect to personal connection. David was intelligent, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in my career. Unlike previous men I'd dated who'd been threatened by my professional drive, David appeared to celebrate it. Our courtship had been efficient, much like David himself. Within 6 months, we were discussing marriage and life goals with the same strategic planning he brought to his investment portfolios. His proposal at Ellsworth's had been perfectly orchestrated. Private dining room, custom menu, and a speech about building a future together where we would push each other toward ever greater success. "We'll be unstoppable together," he'd said, sliding a tastefully substantial diamond ring across the table. A true power couple. I'd been swept up in the romance of it, the idea that I'd found someone who valued my ambition rather than feeling diminished by it. We married 4 months later in a carefully planned ceremony that reflected what David called our personal brand: elegant, ambitious, and Instagram-worthy. Looking back now, I could see how David had always been hyper-aware of how we were perceived. Our home, our vacations, our social media presence, all curated to project success and harmony. Even my career achievements had been cataloged and displayed, like trophies, mentioned at dinner parties and networking events with calculated precision. "You always said David was meticulous about your public image," Jennifer said, interrupting my thoughts. "Maybe this is an extension of that? Using your professional reputation to enhance his standing at Pinnacle? But why now? And why not just ask me? I've supported his career moves before. I've attended his work functions, networked with his colleagues." I stood up and began pacing, unable to sit still with the energy building inside me. There would be no reason to do this behind my back unless what he's doing isn't something you'd support. Jennifer finished my thought. My phone chimed with a text message, and I lunged for it, hoping it was David with an explanation. Instead, it was Thomas Wilson, my boss at Altitude Creative. "Sarah, just got a call from Rachel Bennett at Pinnacle Financial asking about the timeline for your transition. Confused as I thought you were committed to leading our new campaign. Call me when you can." I stared at the message, my hands starting to shake. "Oh my God," I whispered, showing Jennifer the text. "It's worse than we thought. David isn't just putting my name on internal documents. He's telling people I'm leaving my job to work at Pinnacle." Jennifer took the phone, reading the message twice. "Rachel Bennett? Isn't that his new assistant? The one he mentioned started a few months ago?" "Rachel from Harvard Business School, yes," I said, a new suspicion forming. The one he said was revolutionizing how they approach client communications. The one he's been working late with at least 3 nights a week for the past 2 months. Jennifer's expression shifted, her lawyer mind clearly connecting dots. "The same 2 months during which you've been working on the biggest pitch of your career, the one that could get you that promotion to executive director. The promotion that would mean I'd be making more than David for the first time in our marriage," I added, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. We looked at each other, the unspoken possibility hanging between us. I didn't want to say it out loud, that my husband might be sabotaging my career while possibly becoming involved with his assistant. It seemed too much like a cliché, too painfully obvious. But the evidence was mounting in a way I couldn't ignore. I checked my watch. It was nearly 9 p.m. 3 hours passed when our anniversary dinner should have started. I picked up my phone and tried calling David again. This time, instead of going to voicemail, it rang several times before someone answered. But it wasn't David. "Hello?" A woman's voice, slightly breathless. I froze, not expecting anyone but David to answer his personal phone. "Hello? Who is this?" the woman asked again. I cleared my throat. "This is Sarah Miller, David's wife. Who is this?" There was a pause, then what sounded like muffled conversation in the background. "Oh, Sarah, hi. This is Rachel. Rachel Bennett from David's office. I'm so sorry. We're just wrapping up an emergency client meeting, and David left his phone at the conference table when he stepped out. Do you want me to have him call you back?" Her tone was professional but overly familiar, as if we were acquaintances who spoke regularly. We had met exactly twice at company functions, and both times she had been politely distant. "Yes, please tell him to call me immediately. It's our anniversary, and I need to understand why our dinner reservation was canceled and why my name is appearing on Pinnacle Financial Letterhead." I kept my voice steady, channeling the same authority I used in client presentations. Another pause, longer this time. "I'll let him know you called," Rachel finally said, her voice noticeably cooler. "Congratulations on your anniversary." The call ended, and I looked at Jennifer, who had been watching my face throughout the conversation. "That was Rachel," I said unnecessarily. "Answering his phone at 9 p.m. on your anniversary," Jennifer noted, refilling our wine glasses. "During an emergency client meeting." I sat back down, trying to process everything. The canceled reservation. The company letterhead with my name and forged signature. My boss's text about my supposed transition to Pinnacle. Rachel answering David's phone on our anniversary evening. "I need to know what's really going on," I said, making a decision. Not just what David will tell me when he finally decides to come home, but the actual truth. Jennifer nodded. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I need to talk to Thomas first thing tomorrow. Find out exactly what Rachel told him about my supposed career change." I took a deep breath. "And then I need to find out who else at Pinnacle believes I'm joining the company, and what exactly they think my role will be." "That's a good start," Jennifer agreed. "But what about tonight? What are you going to do when David comes home?" I considered the question carefully. My instinct was confrontation, to demand answers the moment he walked through the door. But something told me that approach would only get me carefully constructed half-truths. "I'm going to say nothing," I decided. "I'm going to see what explanation he offers for missing our anniversary dinner. I'm going to watch and listen. If he's been lying about something this significant, I want to understand the full extent of it before I confront him." Jennifer looked concerned. "Are you sure you can do that? Pretend everything is normal when you know it isn't?" I thought about the marketing campaigns I'd created over the years, how I'd learned to craft narratives that engaged people on emotional levels while strategically withholding information until just the right moment. I thought about how David had apparently been crafting his own narrative about my career without my knowledge or consent. "Yes," I said with newfound determination, "I've spent my career telling compelling stories. I think it's time I use those skills to uncover the truth about my own life." Jennifer stayed until nearly 11 p.m., helping me formulate a plan for the next day. We agreed she would pick me up in the morning and drive me to the office. I wasn't sure I trusted myself to drive safely with everything swirling in my mind. I would meet with Thomas first thing, then determine my next steps based on what I learned. After she left, I changed into pajamas and removed my makeup, the anniversary night preparations now feeling like they had happened to someone else in another lifetime. I busied myself reviewing my presentation for tomorrow's pitch meeting, trying to focus on the work that had always given me a sense of purpose and control. At 11:43 p.m., I heard David's key in the lock. I quickly closed my laptop and slipped into bed, turning off the bedside lamp. I could hear him moving quietly through our condo, the familiar sounds of his keys dropping into the bowl by the door, his shoes being placed precisely in the entryway closet. When he entered our bedroom, I kept my breathing deep and regular, feigning sleep. He paused in the doorway for a long moment, and I could feel him watching me. Then he sighed, a sound that carried more resignation than regret, and headed to the bathroom. The shower ran for what seemed like an unusually long time. When he finally came to bed, he maintained a careful distance from my side, not reaching out as he normally would. I lay there in the darkness, listening to his breathing, wondering how someone could become a stranger while lying just inches away. I thought about the life we had built together, the carefully selected condo with its perfect view, the coordinated career advancements, the social connections strategically cultivated. I had believed we were partners in creating this life, equals in a modern marriage based on mutual respect and ambition. Now I wondered if I had been living in a carefully constructed illusion, one where my successes and identity were valuable, only insofar as they contributed to a narrative David controlled. The letterhead with my name, the conversations about my career happening without my knowledge, these weren't just deceptions. They were appropriations of my professional identity, my reputation that I had spent years building. As I lay awake, beside my sleeping husband, I made another decision. Whatever I discovered tomorrow, I would not allow anyone, not even the man I had promised to spend my life with, to co-opt my identity or undermine the career I had built through my own talent and hard work. The woman I had been earlier today, the one who had spent hours preparing to celebrate a marriage milestone, was already fading away. In her place, someone new was emerging, someone determined to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Morning came after a night of fitful sleep. I rose before David's alarm, showered, and dressed with particular care, choosing a charcoal gray suit that projected authority and confidence, armor for whatever the day might bring. David stirred as I was applying my makeup in the bathroom. He appeared in the doorway, hair tousled, expression cautious. "You're up early," he observed, leaning against the doorframe in the casual way that had once made my heart skip. "Big pitch meeting today," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Shouldn't you be getting ready too? It's already past 7. A flicker of relief crossed his face. He thought I didn't know about last night's canceled anniversary plans. "I've got a late start today. Board meeting was rescheduled." Another lie. I'd seen email evidence that the board meeting was proceeding as planned. "Right," I said, focusing on applying my lipstick to avoid meeting his eyes. "Well, I should be home around 6 if the pitch goes well. Later if we need to make adjustments." "About yesterday," he began, his voice taking on that smooth, regretful tone he used with clients when explaining market downturns. "An emergency came up with the Eastern Division acquisition. Couldn't be helped." I turned to face him, maintaining a neutral expression despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "These things happen. Work emergencies are part of our lives." He seemed relieved by my understanding response, moving closer to kiss my cheek. "I'll make it up to you this weekend, I promise." I smiled tightly, looking forward to it. Jennifer texted that she was waiting downstairs, and I gathered my materials for the pitch meeting. David was still in the bathroom when I left, calling out a casual, "Good luck today." I didn't respond. Luck had nothing to do with what lay ahead. What I needed now was truth, clarity, and the courage to face whatever I discovered. Jennifer took one look at my face as I slid into her car and nodded, approvingly. "You didn't confront him." "Not yet," I confirmed. "He lied about where he was last night. Said there was an emergency with the Eastern Division acquisition." "The same Eastern Division mentioned in that letter with your name on it," Jennifer noted, pulling into traffic. "Exactly. And he lied about today's schedule, too. Said the board meeting was rescheduled, but I know it's still happening." Jennifer navigated through downtown traffic with practiced ease. "So, what's your first move?" "Meeting with Thomas at 8 a.m. before the regular staff arrives. I need to understand exactly what Rachel told him about my supposed career plans." As we approached the Altitude Creative offices, I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. Despite the personal turmoil, this place represented what I had built through my own talent and determination. Whatever was happening with David and Pinnacle Financial, this part of my life was real, substantive, and mine alone. Thomas was already in his office when I arrived, peering at his computer through reading glasses that made him look more like a distinguished professor than the maverick creative director he was known to be. At 58, he had built Altitude from a two-person operation to one of Denver's most respected boutique agencies. He looked up as I knocked on his open door. "Sarah? Come in." "I was hoping to catch you before the pitch meeting." I closed the door behind me and took a seat across from his desk. "I got your text last night about Rachel Bennett from Pinnacle." Thomas removed his glasses, his expression concerned. "Yes, that call caught me off guard. She spoke as if your departure was a settled matter, wanted to discuss transition timelines for your accounts, said you'd be joining Pinnacle as marketing integration director within the month." I took a deep breath. "Thomas, I need to be very clear about something. I have never discussed joining Pinnacle Financial. I have no plans to leave Altitude, and until last night, I had never heard of this marketing integration director position." Thomas's bushy eyebrows rose in surprise. "But Ms. Bennett specifically said—" "Whatever she said is false," I interrupted firmly. "I'm committed to Altitude and to the campaign we're pitching today. Something strange is happening, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it." Thomas studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I've known you for 6 years, Sarah. You're not just one of our most talented directors. You're someone I trust implicitly. If you say you're not leaving, that's good enough for me." Relief washed over me. At least one relationship in my professional life remained solid. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "Did Rachel mention anything else? Any specific details about this supposed position?" Thomas frowned in concentration. "She mentioned you'd be overseeing marketing for the Eastern Division acquisition. Said your husband had been instrumental in bringing you on board, that the board was impressed with your previous work with Altitude. The Eastern Division again. This was clearly the centerpiece of whatever David was orchestrating." "Can I ask you something else?" I ventured. "Completely hypothetically, if someone used another person's professional reputation and forged their signature on company documents, what would the potential repercussions be?" Thomas's expression grew serious. "Professionally? Termination, almost certainly. Legally? That could constitute fraud, especially if financial decisions were made based on that misrepresentation." He leaned forward. "Sarah, what's really going on here?" I hesitated, not ready to fully articulate what I was beginning to suspect. "I'm still figuring that out," I said honestly. "But I need you to know that if anyone from Pinnacle contacts you again about me, I'd appreciate being informed immediately." "Of course," he agreed. "And Sarah, whatever's happening, remember you've built something valuable here. Your reputation, your work, that belongs to you and no one else." His words resonated deeply, reinforcing the determination I'd felt growing since the previous evening. My reputation was mine. My career was mine. And I would not allow anyone to co-opt or undermine either. As I left Thomas's office, I checked my phone and found 3 missed calls from David. No voicemails, just calls. Testing to see if I'd answer? Or beginning to realize that his carefully constructed plans might be unraveling. The pitch meeting went surprisingly well. Despite the turmoil in my personal life, I found clarity and focus when presenting the campaign I'd developed. Perhaps the stakes of my marriage had put professional pressure in perspective, or maybe I was channeling my anger into passion for the work. Either way, the client was enthusiastic, and we left with a tentative green light pending final budget approval. Under normal circumstances, we would have celebrated as a team. Today, I begged off, claiming another appointment. Instead, I asked Jennifer to drive me to Pinnacle Financial's downtown offices. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as we parked across the street from the gleaming high-rise. Confronting him at his workplace might just give him time to create more cover stories. "I'm not confronting David," I clarified, checking my appearance in the visor mirror. "I'm going to meet with Rachel Bennett, professional to professional." Jennifer's eyes widened. "That's bold. It's necessary, I countered. She's central to whatever is happening. She called my boss. She answered my husband's phone last night. And based on the email I saw, she's likely involved in creating that letterhead with my name on it. I want to see her reaction when I walk, in unannounced. And what exactly is your plan once you're face to face? I considered the question. I'm going to use every skill I've developed in my marketing career: reading people, identifying leverage points, and getting to the truth. Behind the carefully crafted messaging, Jennifer smiled grimly. Go get her. The sleek glass and steel of Pinnacle Financial Partners headquarters seemed to reach endlessly upward as I stood outside, gathering myself for what came next. This building had always represented David's world to me, a domain of precise calculations, risk management, and strategic wealth cultivation. A world adjacent to mine, but fundamentally different. I'd visited his office many times over the years, always as David's wife, the marketing expert whose presence added a touch of creative energy to the financial functions. I was familiar enough that security would wave me through without question, especially if I mentioned surprising my husband. Today, that familiarity would serve a different purpose. Call me in an hour, I instructed Jennifer as I stepped out of her car. If I don't answer, wait 15 minutes and call again. And if you still don't answer? She asked, her lawyer's mind always planning for contingencies. Then start calling David incessantly, I said with grim determination. That should create enough of a distraction for me to exit gracefully if needed. The security guard at the front desk greeted me with recognition. Mrs. Miller, haven't seen you in a while. Just thought I'd surprise David, I replied with practiced warmth. And I need to drop off some documents with Rachel Bennett. Is she at her desk today? Sure is. 14th floor, East Wing. You remember the way? I nodded and headed for the elevator, my heart pounding against my ribs. The 14th floor housed executive offices and their support staff. David's office was on the northwest corner with views of both downtown and the distant mountains. Rachel's desk would be in the antechamber outside his office, positioned to screen visitors and manage his schedule. When the elevator doors opened on the 14th floor, I paused to observe the layout. Several admins looked up briefly before returning to their work. Through the glass walls, I could see various executives in their offices, some on calls, others hunched over paperwork. No sign of David yet. His office door was closed, blinds drawn. Rachel sat at her desk outside his office, her posture perfect, her sleek black hair falling in a precise line at her shoulders. She was younger than me, perhaps 30 to my 34, and dressed with the careful elegance of someone who understood that in corporate finance, appearance was its own form of currency. She didn't notice me at first, absorbed in whatever was on her computer screen. I approached quietly, observing how comfortable she seemed in this space. This wasn't just an administrative assistant manning a desk. This was someone who had claimed territory. Rachel, I said, stopping directly in front of her desk. She looked up, her professional smile freezing when she recognized me. Sarah, we weren't expecting you today. Clearly, I replied, keeping my voice pleasant but firm. I thought we should talk directly, given that you've been discussing my career plans with my employer. Her eyes darted toward David's closed door, then back to me. I'm sorry, I don't... Thomas Wilson, my boss at Altitude Creative. You called him yesterday to discuss my transition to Pinnacle. I set my bag on the edge of her desk, establishing physical presence in her space. A transition I know nothing about. Color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. There must be some confusion. I was just following up on discussions that David said, I'm going to stop you right there, I interrupted gently. Whatever David told you about my career plans was false. I am not leaving Altitude Creative. I am not joining Pinnacle Financial. And I would never allow someone else, not even my husband, to negotiate my professional future without my involvement. Rachel's expression shifted from defensive to confused. But the board presentation, the letterhead with your signature? Show me, I said, not a request but a command. She hesitated, clearly calculating risks and options. Rachel, I said, lowering my voice, you can show me what's been created in my name voluntarily, or I can take this to HR and legal as a case of identity theft and fraudulent representation. Your choice. The mention of HR and legal seemed to decide matters. She turned to her computer, typed briefly, then swiveled the monitor toward me. This is the presentation from last week's board meeting. David presented it himself. The screen displayed a polished slideshow titled Eastern Division Integration, Marketing Strategy and Implementation. My name was listed as the principal architect of the strategy, complete with my professional headshot from Altitude's website and a bio that accurately summarized my career accomplishments. I scrolled through the presentation, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. It was detailed, substantive, and clearly represented weeks of work I had never done. The strategy itself was solid, leveraging approaches I had indeed developed at Altitude, but applied to Pinnacle's business model with insider knowledge I didn't possess. Who created this? I asked, scrolling back to examine specific slides. Rachel shifted uncomfortably. David provided the outline and financial projections. I helped with the formatting and some of the market analysis. We used your published case studies as reference points for the methodology. And my signature? The letterhead with my name and title? She met my eyes briefly before looking away. David had your digital signature. He said you'd authorized its use for preliminary documents while you were transitioning between roles. The casual violation took my breath away. Not just my professional identity, but my legal signature, appropriated without consent, applied to documents I'd never seen. And when did this supposed transition become part of Pinnacle's official plans? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. The board approved bringing you on 2 weeks ago, Rachel replied, seeming genuinely perplexed by my reaction. David has been building toward this for months. The Eastern Division acquisition hinges on integrating their regional marketing with our corporate strategy. Your expertise was presented as the key to making it work. 2 weeks, the timing aligned. Precisely with the escalation of my own career opportunity at Altitude, the major campaign that could lead to my promotion to executive director. Where is David now? I asked, checking my watch. Nearly noon. He's in the board meeting, Rachel said. They're finalizing the Eastern Division acquisition terms. Your marketing integration plan is a central component. I felt lightheaded, the scale of the deception expanding beyond what I'd imagined. This wasn't just about David putting my name on a few internal documents. He had built an entire professional narrative around my supposed involvement, one that affected major business decisions and multiple careers. Rachel, I said carefully, what exactly is your role in all this? She straightened, her professional demeanor returning. I'm the liaison between our acquisition team and Eastern Division. I've been coordinating the integration planning across departments. And your relationship with my husband is strictly professional? I asked directly. Her expression flickered with something guilt, indignation. It passed too quickly to identify. David and I work closely on the acquisition. It's an intense project that requires long hours, including answering his personal phone on my anniversary, I pressed. A flash of genuine surprise crossed her face. Yesterday was your anniversary? Her reaction seemed authentic. She hadn't known, but that only opened new questions. If Rachel wasn't the reason for the canceled dinner, what was? Before I could continue, the door to David's office opened, and a tall man in his 60s emerged. Graham Whitley, Pinnacle's CEO. I recognized him from company events, though we'd never spoken directly. Ah, you must be Sarah, he said, extending his hand with practiced cordiality. "Wonderful timing. We were just discussing the final details of your marketing strategy for Eastern Division. David didn't mention you'd be joining us today." I shook his hand automatically, mind racing. "Mr. Whitley, I apologize for the confusion, but there seems to be a significant misunderstanding." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh?" "I am not joining Pinnacle Financial," I stated firmly. "I have never discussed such a transition with anyone at this company, including my husband. And I did not develop or authorize the marketing strategy being presented to your board." Whitley's genial expression froze, his eyes darting between me and Rachel. "I think we should continue this conversation privately," he said, gesturing toward a small conference room nearby. I followed him, pulse thundering in my ears. Rachel remained at her desk, looking stricken. The conference room was minimalist and soundproof, designed for sensitive discussions. Whitley closed the door and took a seat across from me, his expression now carefully neutral. "Mrs. Miller, I'm a bit confused by your statement. Your husband has been discussing your involvement in this acquisition for months. The board approved a rather substantial compensation package for you just last week." "Without ever speaking to me directly?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "David assured us you were fully on board," Whitley replied slowly. "He said you were eager for a change from agency work and wanted to apply your expertise to the financial sector." I took a deep breath, organizing my thoughts. "Mr. Whitley, I need to be absolutely clear. I am the marketing director at Altitude. Creative. I am currently leading a major campaign that launches next month. I have never discussed joining Pinnacle, have never authorized the use of my name or signature on any Pinnacle documents, and have never created any marketing strategy for your Eastern Division acquisition." Whitley's expression darkened. "Are you saying your husband fabricated your involvement?" "That appears to be the case," I confirmed, the words painful to say aloud. He was silent for a long moment, processing the implications. "The board meeting is still in session," he finally said. "David is presenting the final integration timeline as we speak, a timeline that prominently features your leadership of the marketing components." "Then I suggest we clear this up immediately," I said, standing. "I'm happy to address the board directly." Whitley held up a hand. "Let's approach this carefully. False representation to the board is a serious matter, with potentially severe consequences." "I'm aware of that," I said. "But continuing to allow decisions to be made based on fraudulent information isn't an option." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Wait here, please." After Whitley left, I sat alone in the conference room, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what David had done. Using my name and professional reputation to advance his acquisition deal. Creating entire presentations and strategies falsely attributed to me. Establishing a position and compensation package I'd never agreed to. The betrayal went beyond our marriage. This was a calculated co-opting of my professional identity, the aspect of myself I had always protected and nurtured, even when compromising in other areas of our relationship. 20 minutes later, the door opened. David stood there, his face, ashen Whitley behind him. For a moment, we just stared at each other. 7 years of marriage, and I felt I was seeing him clearly for the first time. Not as the supportive, ambitious husband I'd believed in, but as someone capable of profound deception. "Sarah," he began, his voice strained. "This isn't how I wanted you to find out." "Find out what exactly?" I asked coolly. "That you've been using my name and forging my signature? That you've created an entire professional narrative for me without my knowledge? That you're presenting my supposed work to your board today?" He stepped into the room, closing the door on Whitley. "I can explain. The Eastern Division acquisition is crucial for my position at Pinnacle. Their regional marketing infrastructure is a mess. Integrating it requires expertise that no one here possesses. So you volunteered mine, I said flatly, without asking me. I was going to bring you in properly once the acquisition was approved, he insisted, taking the seat across from me. The initial presentations just needed your name to establish credibility. The board trusts your reputation. They've seen what you've accomplished at altitude. My reputation, I repeated. The one I've spent my entire career building. The one you appropriated for your own advancement. He leaned forward, adopting the persuasive tone he used when pitching investment strategies. Sarah, try to see the bigger picture. This acquisition means a senior vice presidency for me, a substantial salary increase, profile with the national board. These opportunities don't come along often. And my career? My advancement opportunities? At altitude? Did those factor into your calculations at all? A flicker of dismissal crossed his face. Altitude is a boutique agency with limited growth potential. You've reached the ceiling there. This move to Pinnacle would elevate both our careers simultaneously. The casual diminishment of my professional path, one I had chosen deliberately, one that fulfilled me creatively and intellectually, revealed something fundamental about how David viewed my work. Not as a career with its own validity and value, but as an accessory that should ultimately serve his ambitions. The Eastern Division approvals are happening now, I observed, right when I'm positioned for promotion at altitude. That timing isn't coincidental, is it? David's expression hardened slightly. Your potential promotion would disrupt our professional balance. We've always maintained a clear understanding of our respective roles. You mean you've always earned more than me? I translated. That balance was important to you. It's about strategic positioning, he corrected. My career path has always had higher earning potential. It makes sense to prioritize it in our long-term planning. The calculated coldness of his perspective stunned me. 7 years together, and I had never fully recognized this aspect of him. Or perhaps I had seen glimpses but chosen to interpret them more generously. And our anniversary dinner? I asked. The one you canceled without telling me? Was that also about strategic positioning? I told you, the Eastern Division negotiations required my attention, he said, impatience creeping into his tone. These final approvals determine our financial future for years to come. Surely you understand that outweighs one dinner. One dinner, I echoed. Our 5th anniversary, a milestone most couples consider significant. But you didn't even bother to call me. Just canceled the reservation and went silent. I was going to explain everything tonight, he insisted. The acquisition approval, the position we've created for you, the compensation package. It was going to be a surprise, a better anniversary gift than some overpriced meal. His framing was so divorced from emotional reality that I almost laughed. He genuinely believed deciding my career path without my knowledge or consent was a gift. David, I said quietly, do you understand what you've done? You've committed fraud. You've forged my signature on official company documents. You've misrepresented my professional involvement to your board and executive team. That's an extreme characterization, he objected. I facilitated an opportunity, created a pathway. The details could be adjusted once you were officially brought on board. The details, I repeated. You mean the lies, the forgery, the manipulation of my professional reputation. He leaned back, frustration evident. You're overreacting to standard business development practices. Partnerships are proposed and solidified this way every day. The intent was always to bring you in formally once the framework was established. Intent doesn't change the fact that you made decisions about my career without my knowledge or consent, I said, rising from my chair. You violated my professional autonomy and my trust. Where are you going? He demanded as I moved toward the door. To speak with Mr. Whitley about addressing this situation properly, I said. The board needs to know immediately that I have no association with the Eastern Division acquisition or any position at Pinnacle. David stood quickly, blocking my path. Sarah, think about what you're doing. This could have serious consequences for my position here. You should have considered that before presenting fraudulent information to your board, I replied evenly. His expression shifted, calculation replacing frustration. If you expose this publicly, it affects both of us. Your name is all over. These documents, your signature, your professional methodology. How will it look to your clients at Altitude when they learn your work has been appropriated for another company? The threat was implicit, but clear. Keep quiet about the deception, or risk your own professional reputation in the fallout. I studied him, this man I had married, had built a life with, had believed was my partner in all things. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that our marriage was over. Not just because of the deception itself, but because of what it revealed about how he fundamentally viewed me, as an asset to be deployed for his advancement rather than a person with her own valid ambitions and autonomy. I'm going to speak with Mr. Whitley, I repeated, my voice steady. What happens after that will be determined by how honestly we address this situation. The door opened before David could respond. Whitley stood there, his expression grave. The board has called a recess, he said. They'd like to speak with both of you. The boardroom of Pinnacle Financial embodied corporate power. Gleaming mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of downtown Denver and the mountains beyond. 8 board members sat watching us as we entered, their expressions ranging from curious to concerned. Whitley took his position at the head of the table. Mrs. Miller has brought a serious matter to our attention, he began without preamble. It appears that her involvement in the Eastern Division marketing strategy has been misrepresented. She has not agreed to join Pinnacle, has not developed the integration plan presented to this board, and did not authorize the use of her name or signature on company documents. A murmur ran through the room. Several board members looked directly at David, who maintained a carefully composed expression. Mr. Miller will have an opportunity to address these concerns, Whitley continued. But first, I believe we should hear directly from Mrs. Miller. All eyes turned to me. In that moment, I felt a strange calm descend. This was familiar territory in an unexpected way, presenting to a room of executives, communicating difficult information clearly and compellingly. I had done this countless times in my career, though never with such personal stakes. Thank you for the opportunity to address you directly, I began, keeping my voice professional. I am the marketing director at Altitude Creative, a position I've held for 4 years. I am currently leading the development of a major campaign for one of our primary clients, with a pitch meeting scheduled for this afternoon. I paused, making eye contact with several board members. I have never discussed joining Pinnacle Financial. I have never seen or approved the marketing integration strategy for Eastern Division that was presented to you. I did not authorize the use of my name, professional biography, or signature on any documents related to this acquisition. One of the board members, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair, leaned forward. Mrs. Miller, with all due respect, these materials contain detailed strategic approaches that align with methodologies you've implemented at Altitude. Are you suggesting these were appropriated without your knowledge? That is precisely what I'm suggesting, I confirmed. My work at Altitude is publicly documented in case studies and industry publications. The approaches could have been adapted from those sources, combined with insider knowledge of Pinnacle's operations that I don't possess. And the signature on these documents? Asked another board member, sliding a folder toward me. I opened it to find the complete Eastern Division marketing integration plan, bearing my digital signature on the approval page. The signature was indeed mine, identical to the one I used on official Altitude documents. This is my signature, I acknowledged, but I did not sign this document. My husband had access to my digital signature files on our shared home network. All eyes shifted to David, who sat rigidly beside me. "David," Whitley said, his tone measured, "would you care to explain?" David straightened, adjusting his tie, a gesture I recognized as his preparation for difficult client conversations. "There's clearly been a miscommunication," he began smoothly. "Sarah and I had numerous discussions about the possibility of her bringing her expertise to Pinnacle. The framework I presented was based on those conversations and her established methodologies." "That's false," I interjected calmly. "We never discussed my joining Pinnacle, not once." "Perhaps not in those explicit terms," David countered, "but we often talked about the limitations of your position at altitude and opportunities for applying your skills in the financial sector. General conversations about career development are not consent to create documents in my name or present me as the architect of strategies I've never seen," I replied, keeping my focus on the board rather than David. The gray-haired woman spoke again. "Mr. Miller, did your wife explicitly authorize you to use her signature on these documents?" A moment of silence stretched as David calculated his response. "I had access to her digital signature for household matters," he finally said. "I used it on these preliminary documents with the understanding that she would be formally brought into the process once the acquisition framework was approved." "So that's a no," the woman clarified, her expression hardening. "The board approved a compensation package for Mrs. Miller last week," noted another member, "on the understanding that she had agreed to join Pinnacle as marketing integration director." Was that understanding false? David shifted in his seat. The position and compensation were developed based on market standards for someone of Sarah's expertise. The formal offer would have been presented to her upon final acquisition. Approval. Again, without her prior knowledge or consent, Whitley summarized, his disapproval evident. The gravity of the situation seemed to be settling over the room. What had begun as a promising acquisition discussion had transformed into something much more problematic, evidence of fraudulent representation by one of their senior investment advisors. "I want to be clear," I said into the increasingly tense silence. "I'm not here to damage Pinnacle Financial or disrupt your acquisition plans. I'm here because my professional identity was used without my knowledge or consent, and that needed to be addressed honestly." Whitley nodded. "We appreciate your directness, Mrs. Miller. The board will need to discuss how to proceed regarding both the Eastern Division acquisition and this matter of misrepresentation." He turned to David. "Mr. Miller, please wait in my office. Mrs. Miller, if you could remain for a few additional questions." David stood, straightening his suit jacket. "I'd prefer to stay while my wife is being questioned." "That won't be necessary," Whitley said firmly. "This is now a matter of corporate governance." After David left, the questioning continued for another 30 minutes. The board wanted to understand exactly what I knew about the Eastern Division acquisition, when I had discovered the misuse of my name, and whether I had any interest in actually joining Pinnacle under different circumstances. I answered truthfully. I knew nothing about the acquisition beyond what I'd learned today. I had discovered the misrepresentation yesterday when I found company letterhead with my name on it. And no, I had no interest in leaving Altitude Creative, where I was pursuing my own advancement opportunities. "One final question," said the gray-haired woman, who had introduced herself as Catherine Baxter, head of the governance committee. "Do you intend to pursue legal action regarding the unauthorized use of your signature and professional identity?" The question gave me pause. I hadn't thought that far ahead, focused as I was on uncovering the truth and addressing the immediate deception. My priority right now is ensuring that my name is removed from all Pinnacle documents and that the board understands I have no involvement with the Eastern Division acquisition, I said carefully. Next steps beyond that will depend on how this situation is resolved. Catherine nodded, seemingly satisfied with my measured response. Whitley escorted me from the boardroom, his expression grave. "This is an unfortunate situation, Mrs. Miller. Pinnacle values integrity in all our operations. We'll be addressing this matter thoroughly. What happens now? I asked as we walked toward the elevator. The board will determine how to proceed. With the acquisition without the marketing integration component you were supposedly leading, he replied. As for the misrepresentation issue, that's a more complex matter with potential legal and employment implications. In other words, David's position at Pinnacle was in serious jeopardy. I hope you understand that my intent wasn't to damage my husband's career, I said, feeling a strange need to clarify this despite everything. I simply couldn't allow decisions to continue being made based on fraudulent information. Whitley stopped, turning to face me directly. Mrs. Miller, in my 40 years in financial services, I've learned that integrity isn't situational. Your husband made deliberate misrepresentations to this board that could have had significant financial and legal consequences for Pinnacle. You didn't damage his career by exposing those misrepresentations. He did that himself. His words resonated with unexpected clarity. I hadn't created this situation by uncovering it. The responsibility lay with David and the choices he had made. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Vindication that the truth was now acknowledged, sadness at the confirmation of David's betrayal, uncertainty about what would come next. But beneath it all was something unexpected: relief. The weight of deception had been lifted, even if it revealed a more painful reality beneath. Jennifer was waiting outside as promised, her expression shifting from concern to curiosity when she saw me emerge alone. "What happened?" she asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "David has been representing me as part of Pinnacle's acquisition strategy," I said, the words still sounding surreal. "Creating documents with my name and signature, telling the board I was joining the company, building an entire marketing integration, plan supposedly developed by me." Jennifer stared at me in disbelief. I don't even have words. That's beyond manipulation. That's fraud." "That's what the board seemed to think too," I said, leaning back against the headrest. "They're meeting now to decide how to handle it." "And David?" "Waiting in Whitley's office. His future at Pinnacle is probably being decided as we speak." Jennifer pulled away from the curb, navigating into midday traffic. "Where to? Back to altitude for your pitch meeting?" I checked the time, nearly 2 o'clock. "No, I need to go. Home first, change clothes, clear my head before the presentation." She nodded, turning toward our downtown condo. "What are you going to do about David? About your marriage?" The question I had been avoiding since discovering the first evidence of deception. In truth, the answer had been crystallizing throughout my conversation with the Pinnacle board, becoming increasingly clear and undeniable. "I can't stay with someone who would appropriate my professional identity for his own advancement," I said quietly. "Who would make decisions about my career without my knowledge or consent? Who would forge my signature on legal documents?" Jennifer reached over and squeezed my hand briefly. "For what it's worth, I think that's the right decision. This goes beyond normal marital problems. This was a fundamental violation of trust and respect." We rode in silence for a while, the familiar streets of downtown Denver passing by. The city looked the same as it had this morning, yet everything had changed. My marriage, my understanding of the man I had built a life with, my vision of the future. "You know what's strange?" I finally said as we approached my building. "Part of me feels like I should be more devastated. 5 years of marriage potentially ending in a single day. But what I feel most strongly right now is clarity. Like I'm seeing everything clearly, for the first time." Jennifer pulled up to the curb and put the car in park, turning to face me. "Maybe because you've been seeing it in pieces for longer than you realized. Today just brought it all into focus." I considered her words. Had there been signs of David's fundamental disregard for my autonomy that I'd overlooked or rationalized? Moments when his ambition had clearly taken precedence over my needs. Times when I'd compromised my own preferences to maintain what he called strategic positioning in our relationship? The answer was yes, of course. The pattern had been there all along, less dramatic, but no less real than today's revelations. I need to get through this pitch meeting first, I said, gathering my resolve, one professional crisis at a time. That's my girl, Jennifer said with approval. Handle the work first. The marriage can implode after you nail the presentation. Despite everything, I laughed, a release of tension that felt unexpectedly good. Will you pick me up from altitude around 5? I might need moral support for whatever comes next. I'll be there, she promised. And Sarah? I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself today. That took courage. As I rode the elevator up to our condo, I prepared myself for the possibility of finding David there. What would I say to him now? How would I navigate the immediate aftermath of this exposure? But the apartment was empty, silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I moved through the spaces that had defined our shared life, the carefully selected furniture, the strategic placement of art, the views we had paid a premium to enjoy. It all looked like a magazine spread, designed to project a particular image of success and sophistication. Had any of it been real? The partnership I thought we had? The mutual support I believed defined our relationship? Or had it always been a carefully managed arrangement designed primarily to advance David's agenda? I changed quickly into the outfit I'd selected for the pitch meeting, a deep blue suit that I knew conveyed both creativity and authority. As I applied fresh makeup, I stared at my reflection, searching for signs of the person I had been this morning before everything changed. She was still there, the professional confidence, the creative passion, the drive to excel. But something had shifted. The woman in the mirror looked more focused, more certain, less willing to compromise her fundamental values for someone else's definition of success. Maybe that was the unexpected gift of David's betrayal. In trying to co-opt my professional identity, he had inadvertently helped me reclaim it more fully than ever before. My phone rang as I was gathering my presentation materials. Pinnacle Financial's number appeared on the screen. Sarah Miller, I answered, bracing myself. Mrs. Miller, this is Catherine Baxter from Pinnacle's board. The crisp, authoritative voice was immediately recognizable from the boardroom. I wanted to inform you personally of the board's initial decisions regarding today's revelations. I appreciate that, I said, settling onto the edge of the sofa. First, we've instructed our legal department to immediately remove your name from all documents related to the Eastern Division acquisition. Any strategies attributed to you will be reassigned or redeveloped. Thank you, I said, relief washing over me. That was my primary concern. Second, the board has placed your husband on administrative leave pending a full investigation of his actions and his future with Pinnacle. The words landed with finality, even though they weren't unexpected. David's career at Pinnacle, the position he had valued enough to risk fraud, was in serious jeopardy. I understand, I said simply. There's one more thing, Catherine continued. The board was impressed by your handling of an extremely difficult situation today. Your professionalism and clarity, even when addressing a personal betrayal, demonstrated exceptional character. I wasn't sure how to respond to this unexpected praise. While the position that was falsely created in your name obviously doesn't exist, Catherine went on, Pinnacle genuinely does need marketing expertise for this acquisition. When the dust settles on this situation, we would be interested in discussing a potential consulting arrangement, one established directly with you, with proper contracts and clear parameters. The offer caught me completely off guard. I appreciate the consideration, I managed to say, but my focus right now is on my responsibilities at altitude. Of course, Catherine replied. This isn't an immediate proposition, simply something to consider in the future, should circumstances align. After we disconnected, I sat for a moment processing this unexpected development. The irony wasn't lost on me. David's deception had created a legitimate professional opportunity, just not the one he had envisioned or on the terms he had established. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Ready when you are. Pitch meeting conquest awaits." As I gathered my materials and headed for the door, I felt an unexpected surge of determination. Whatever happened with my marriage in the coming days, my professional path remained clear and firmly under my control. The presentation I was about to deliver represented work I had actually created, strategies I had genuinely developed, and a future I was authentically building. That clarity of purpose would carry me through whatever came next. The conversations with David that would determine the fate of our marriage, the decisions about our shared life and assets, the explanations to friends and family about what had happened. For now, though, I had a pitch to deliver. And unlike the presentations being given in my name at Pinnacle, this one would truly represent who I was and what I had created. My authentic professional identity, reclaimed from those who would use it for their own advancement. The sleek, glass doors of Altitude Creative welcomed me like an old friend. For the first time all day, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The pitch meeting at Altitude Creative went surprisingly well. Despite the emotional turmoil of discovering my husband's deception, I found myself intensely focused during the presentation. Perhaps because my professional identity, the very thing David had tried to appropriate, felt more precious to me than ever. Our client, a regional healthcare provider looking to rebrand their preventative care services, responded enthusiastically to the campaign concept. Thomas gave me an approving nod as we wrapped up, both of us sensing we'd secured not just their business, but a deeper level of trust. "That was exceptional work, Sarah," Thomas said as we walked back to his office afterward. "Particularly given what I now understand you've been dealing with personally." I smiled, grateful for his support. Work has always been my sanctuary. Today, it felt even more important to be fully present. Thomas settled behind his desk, regarding me thoughtfully. "I received a rather interesting call while you were in the boardroom at Pinnacle." "From whom?" I asked, though I could guess. "Graham Whitley, Pinnacle's CEO." Thomas leaned back in his chair. He wanted to personally apologize for any disruption to our agency caused by the situation with your husband. He also made it quite clear that Pinnacle values their relationship with Altitude and hopes this incident won't affect our ongoing projects with their wealth management division. I hadn't even considered the potential business implications between the two companies. Altitude had developed several targeted campaigns for Pinnacle's wealth management services over the years, projects I'd deliberately kept a professional distance from due to David's position there. "What did you tell him?" I asked. "That Altitude makes decisions based on the quality of our work and the integrity of our partnerships," Thomas replied, "and that you have our complete support through whatever comes next." The simple statement of solidarity meant more than Thomas could know. "Thank you. Today has been revelatory in many ways." He also mentioned something else, Thomas added, his expression cautious. "That their board might be interested in engaging your services directly once this situation resolves. I assume that's not something you were pursuing?" "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "Their governance committee chair mentioned a potential consulting arrangement, but I have no interest in working with Pinnacle in any capacity right now." Thomas nodded, seemingly relieved. "I didn't think so, but given the circumstances, I wanted to ask directly." He paused, then continued more personally. "Sarah, I don't typically involve myself in my employees' private lives, but if you need time or flexibility in the coming days, please know it's available." The offer was characteristic of Thomas's leadership style, professional but humane. "I appreciate that. Right now, focusing on work feels like the best approach, but I may need some accommodation when the legal aspects begin." Legal aspects. The words felt strange, transforming my marriage into a matter of contracts and dissolution. But that transformation had begun the moment David decided to forge my signature and appropriate my professional identity. Jennifer was waiting outside Altitude's building as promised, her expression eager for updates. "How did it go?" "We got the account," I said, sliding into her car. "Client loved the campaign concept." "Of course they did. You're brilliant." She pulled into traffic. "But I meant the whole dealing with your husband's massive deception situation." "No word from David yet," I said, checking my phone again. No calls or texts since I'd left Pinnacle's offices. Catherine Baxter from Pinnacle's board called to tell me they've put him on administrative leave pending investigation. Jennifer whistled low. "That's serious. Administrative leave usually precedes termination in cases like this." "I know," I said quietly. The potential destruction of David's carefully cultivated career should have given me at least some sense of satisfaction after what he'd done. Instead, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, vindication that his actions were being taken seriously, but also a strange sadness for the man I had loved, whose ambition had led him to such devastating choices. "Have you decided what you're going to do?" Jennifer asked as we approached my building. "About going home, I mean. Do you want to stay at my place tonight?" I'd been so focused on managing the immediate crisis that I hadn't thought through the practical implications of confronting David's deception. Our condo, the space we'd shared for 4 years, suddenly felt like contested territory. "I think I need to go home," I said after a moment's consideration. "If David's there, we need to have a direct conversation about what happens next. If he's not, I need time in my own space to process everything." Jennifer frowned. "I'm not sure that's a good idea. He's just had his career implode because of your actions. Justified actions, but still. That's not a great setup for a rational conversation." "His career imploded because of his actions," I corrected gently. "I just exposed them." "True, but people rarely see it that way when they're the ones facing consequences," Jennifer pointed out. "At least let me come up with you to make sure he's not there, or that he's in a reasonable state if he is." I agreed, grateful for her protective instincts. As we rode the elevator to my floor, I mentally prepared for the possibility of finding David waiting, angry, defensive, or perhaps attempting to manipulate the narrative into one where I was overreacting to a simple misunderstanding. The condo was dark and silent when we entered. No sign of David. A quick check confirmed he hadn't been back since morning. His laptop wasn't in its usual place, and the dress shirt he'd left draped over the bedroom chair was still there. "Looks like you have the place to yourself for now," Jennifer observed, visibly relieved. "Want me to stay anyway? We could order in, open wine, engage in some therapeutic husband bashing." I smiled at the offer but shook my head. "I need some time alone to think, to really process what happened today and what it means for my future." Jennifer hugged me tightly before leaving. "Call me anytime, day or night. And Sarah, remember that you didn't cause this. You didn't create this situation. You just refused to participate in the lie." After she left, I moved through the condo, really seeing it for the first time since the discoveries of the previous evening. The space we'd created together suddenly seemed like a carefully constructed set, designed to project the image of success and partnership that David had wanted the world to see. The framed photo on the entryway console caught my eye. David and me at a charity gala last year, both impeccably dressed, his arm around my waist as we smiled for the society photographer. We looked perfect together, the embodiment of a power couple. Had that image been the point all along? Had I been cast in a role rather than chosen as a partner? I removed the photo from its frame and studied it more closely. My smile looked genuine enough. I had been happy that night, proud of David's recognition as a major donor, enjoying the elegant event. But looking at his expression now, I saw something I'd missed before, a subtle calculation in his eyes, an awareness of being seen, of being photographed. of adding another perfect moment to our carefully curated public narrative. How much of our marriage had been authentic connection, and how much had been strategic positioning? The question haunted me as I moved from room to room, noticing details I'd never fully processed before. The home office setup, David's spacious desk positioned by the window with the best view, my smaller workspace tucked into the corner, the closet organization, his suits and shoes allocated twice the space of my wardrobe, the kitchen equipped with professional-grade appliances despite the fact that I rarely cooked elaborate meals, while David's cocktail station was prominently displayed for entertaining his colleagues and clients. Each detail revealed a subtle hierarchy I had accepted without questioning, small compromises that had accumulated into a fundamentally imbalanced partnership. I poured myself a glass of wine, ironically from a bottle David had selected for its impressive label rather than its taste, and settled onto the living room sofa, trying to envision what came next. Divorce seemed inevitable after such a profound betrayal of trust, but the mechanics of disentangling our lives felt overwhelmingly complex. The condo was in both our names, but David had made the down payment from his family trust. Our finances were thoroughly intertwined: joint accounts, shared investments, retirement plans naming each other as beneficiaries. Even our professional lives had more connections than I'd realized, with David apparently leveraging my reputation and work in ways I was only beginning to discover. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Just wanted to check that you're doing all right. The team is prepared to handle tomorrow's client follow-up if you need time." His consideration reminded me again of the stark contrast between my workplace and David's, between a culture that valued authentic contribution and one that prioritized strategic positioning and appearance. The difference felt emblematic of our fundamental incompatibility, a disconnect I had sensed but never fully acknowledged. I was drafting a response to Thomas when the front door opened. David stood in the entranceway, his normally impeccable appearance noticeably disheveled, tie loosened, hair slightly mussed, expression strained. He carried his laptop bag, but none of the confident authority that typically surrounded him. For a moment, we simply looked at each other across the space that had been our shared home. The familiarity of his presence contrasted sharply with the stranger I now knew him to be. "You're here," he said finally, setting down his bag with deliberate care. "I wasn't sure you would be. Where else would I go?" I asked, remaining seated, wine glass still in hand. "This is my home too." He moved into the living room but remained standing, maintaining physical distance that mirrored the emotional chasm between us. "Sarah, we need to talk about what happened today." "Yes, we do," I agreed calmly. "Starting with why you thought it was acceptable to use my name and forge my signature on company documents without my knowledge or consent." He sighed heavily, dropping onto the chair across from me. "It wasn't forgery in the legal sense. Spouses sign for each other all the time." "On birthday cards and package deliveries," I countered. "Not on corporate documents that misrepresent professional involvement and expertise." "The strategy was always going to be legitimized once the acquisition was approved," he insisted, reverting to the same justification he'd offered in the Pinnacle boardroom. "It was a procedural shortcut, not a fundamental deception." "A procedural shortcut," I repeated, the coldness of the rationalization striking me anew. "That's how you characterize creating an entire professional narrative for me without my knowledge? Telling your board I was joining your company when we'd never once discussed such a possibility? Calling my boss to discuss my transition timeline?" David leaned forward, his expression intensifying. "Sarah, try to understand the stakes involved. The Eastern Division acquisition represents the most significant opportunity of my career. Their regional infrastructure is a mess, and integrating their marketing operations requires expertise that no one at Pinnacle possesses." "So you volunteered mine," I said flatly. "I leveraged a connection that made strategic sense," he corrected. Your methodologies are exactly what the acquisition needs. Bringing you in officially would have benefited both our careers simultaneously. But you didn't bring me in officially, I pointed out. You didn't bring me in at all. You simply acted as if I had already agreed, already contributed, already signed on. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. The timing was critical. The board needed confidence in the integration plan before approving the final terms. Once that happened, I would have presented the opportunity to you properly, with the position already established and the compensation package already approved. As a fait accompli, I noted, with the clear expectation that I would leave my position at Altitude, a position I value deeply, to facilitate your acquisition deal. To advance both our careers, he insisted. Altitude is a limited platform. For someone of your talent, Pinnacle would provide greater visibility, substantially higher compensation, and direct application of your methodologies across multiple markets. The presumption still stunned me, that he believed he could assess the value of my position at Altitude better than I could, that he felt entitled to make career decisions on my behalf, based on his determination of what constituted advancement. David, I said carefully, did it ever occur to you to simply ask me? To present this potential opportunity and let me decide if it aligned with my own professional goals? He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw the truth. It hadn't occurred to him because my autonomous decision-making wasn't part of his calculation. My expertise and reputation were assets to be deployed according to his strategic vision, not factors in an equal partnership. I knew you were focused on the healthcare campaign, he finally said. I didn't want to distract you with a hypothetical until the acquisition parameters were established. The excuse was so transparently inadequate that I almost laughed. And our anniversary dinner. Was canceling that without telling me also about not wanting to distract me? His expression shifted, a flicker of genuine remorse crossing his features. The timing of the final acquisition meeting was outside my control. The Eastern Division executives could only meet yesterday evening. I should have called you directly, instead of just canceling the reservation. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But that's the least of the issues between us right now. David stood and moved to the bar cart, pouring himself a generous measure of scotch. The familiar ritual seemed incongruously normal against the backdrop of our disintegrating marriage. Whitley called me after you left, he said, his back still turned to me. I've been suspended pending the board's investigation. They're reviewing all my work on the acquisition to determine if there were other misrepresentations. The clinical term for his lies felt absurdly insufficient. What do you think they'll find? I asked directly. He turned, glass in hand, expression carefully controlled. Nothing comparable to the issue with your involvement. I may have been aggressive in some projections, optimistic about certain integration, timelines, but nothing that exceeds standard practice in acquisition planning. In other words, he'd likely pushed ethical boundaries in other areas too, just not as blatantly as he had with my identity. And what happens next with Pinnacle? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Best case? Formal reprimand? Probationary period? Reassignment to a different division, he said. The assessment businesslike despite the personal stakes. Worst case? Termination with cause. Possibly some form of industry censure depending on how the board characterizes what happened. He took a long drink before continuing. Though their tone today suggests they're leaning toward the latter. Catherine Baxter was particularly uncompromising. She seemed like someone who values integrity, I observed. David's expression hardened slightly. She's someone who values control and sees an opportunity to reshape the investment advisory team. I've been a dissenting voice on several of her initiatives. The immediate reframing of his situation as a political maneuver, rather than a consequence of his actions, was so characteristic that it momentarily rendered me speechless. Even now, facing the collapse of his career due to his own deliberate deception, He was constructing a narrative that positioned him as the victim of others' agendas. "David," I said quietly, "do you actually understand what you did wrong? Not just professionally, but personally? Do you recognize how fundamentally you violated my trust and autonomy?" He set down his glass with careful precision. "I recognize that I took procedural shortcuts that created professional complications. And yes, I should have communicated my plans more explicitly with you before proceeding." Procedural shortcuts, professional complications, more explicit communication. I echoed his euphemisms back to him. Those phrases don't begin to capture what actually happened. You forged my signature. You misrepresented my professional involvement and intentions to your company. You made decisions about my career without my knowledge or consent. "I was creating an opportunity," he began. "No," I interrupted firmly. "You were appropriating my professional identity for your own advancement. You were treating me as an asset to be deployed rather than a partner to be consulted." He moved back to the chair opposite me, his expression shifting to the patient, slightly condescending look he used when explaining complex financial concepts to those he deemed less sophisticated. "Sarah, in any partnership, one person occasionally takes initiative based on their understanding of what's best for both parties." "This wasn't taking initiative," I countered. "This was deliberate deception. You knew I wouldn't agree to leave Altitude for Pinnacle, especially not while leading a major campaign that could result in my promotion. So rather than respect my likely decision, you simply circumvented it." A flash of something, annoyance, frustration, crossed his features before he could suppress it. "Your potential promotion at Altitude complicates our professional dynamic. We've always maintained a clear understanding of our respective career trajectories." "You mean you've always earned more than me?" I translated flatly. "That hierarchy was important to you." "It's about strategic positioning," he corrected, the corporate speak revealing more than he intended. "My career path has always had higher earning potential and broader influence. It makes sense to prioritize it in our long-term planning." The statement was so baldly presumptuous that it momentarily stunned me into silence. He genuinely believed that his career deserved primacy simply because it came with a larger salary, that my professional fulfillment and autonomy were secondary considerations in our strategic positioning. In that moment, with perfect clarity, I knew our marriage was over, not just because of what he had done with the Pinnacle documents, but because of the fundamental worldview those actions revealed, a perspective in which I existed primarily as a supporting player in his narrative of success. "I want a divorce," I said, the words emerging with unexpected steadiness. David stared at me, genuine shock replacing his carefully managed expression. "That's an extreme reaction to a professional misstep." "This wasn't a misstep," I replied calmly. "It was a revelation about who you are, how you view me, and what our marriage has actually been based on." He set his glass down with deliberate control. "You're emotional right now, which is understandable given the circumstances, but major life decisions shouldn't be made in the heat of the moment." The condescension in his tone only reinforced my certainty. Even now, facing the consequences of his deception, he couldn't help but position himself as the rational party while dismissing my perspective as emotional reactivity. "My decision isn't emotional," I said. "It's based on evidence and clear-eyed assessment, the exact approach you've always claimed to value. The evidence shows that you don't respect my professional autonomy or see me as an equal partner. You view my career as subordinate to yours, my identity as something you can appropriate when convenient." "That's an unfair characterization," he protested. "I've always supported your work at Altitude." "You've tolerated my work at Altitude," I corrected, "as long as it didn't interfere with your plans or exceed your achievements. The moment my potential promotion threatened to disrupt your sense of professional hierarchy, you took steps to redirect my career path without my knowledge or consent. David stood abruptly, moving to the window that overlooked the Denver skyline. His silhouette against the cityscape struck me as oddly symbolic. He had always positioned himself against an impressive backdrop, carefully cultivating the image of success. "If that's truly how you see our marriage," he said finally, "perhaps you're right. Perhaps we should consider separation. But divorce is a significant legal and financial process with long-term implications. We should approach it carefully, with proper counsel and consideration." Even in this moment of relationship dissolution, his focus remained on process management and damage control. The absence of emotional response, no pleading, no genuine remorse, not even real anger, confirmed that his primary concern was navigating the professional and financial implications rather than addressing the human impact of his actions. "I'll contact a divorce attorney tomorrow," I said, rising from the sofa and gathering my phone and wine glass. "I assume you'll want to do the same." "Where are you going?" he asked as I moved toward the bedroom. "To pack what I need for the next few days," I replied. "I'll be staying with Jennifer until we can establish more formal arrangements. This condo doesn't feel like a space I can think clearly in right now." "That's unnecessary," David said quickly. "I can stay at the Pinnacle corporate apartment while we sort things out. There's no reason for you to displace yourself." The offer sounded considerate on the surface, but I recognized the strategic thinking beneath it, establishing himself as reasonable and accommodating while potentially strengthening his claim to the property in future negotiations. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully, "but I need physical distance from this space to process everything that's happened. The condo represents too many aspects of our marriage that I'm now seeing in a different light." He nodded, his expression already shifting toward the calculated neutrality I recognized from difficult client meetings. "As you wish. We should establish some parameters for communication moving forward. Given the sensitive professional implications, it would be prudent to limit discussions about Pinnacle matters to our respective legal representatives." "I agree," I said, slightly taken aback by how quickly he had transitioned to formalized separation planning. "I have no interest in further involvement with Pinnacle's internal matters. My only concern was ensuring my name and professional identity were no longer being misused." "And the board has assured you that's being addressed," he confirmed, his tone now almost entirely businesslike. "We should also consider how to communicate this situation to our social and professional circles. A unified message would minimize unnecessary speculation." The suggestion was so perfectly David, controlling the narrative, managing perceptions, transforming even our marital breakdown into a matter of strategic messaging. It crystallized for me just how fundamentally different our priorities and values had always been. "I don't intend to proactively announce our separation," I said, "but I also won't participate in crafting a unified message that obscures the truth of what happened. If asked, I'll be honest about the reasons I chose to end our marriage." His expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "That approach could have professional consequences for both of us. Discretion would serve our mutual interests better." "Honesty serves my personal integrity better," I countered, "and that's become a non-negotiable priority for me." We looked at each other across the elegant living room that had been the backdrop for countless dinner parties and professional gatherings, events designed to enhance our image as the perfect power couple. The careful construction of that image had required constant small compromises on my part, adjustments I'd made so automatically that I'd stopped noticing them. Standing my ground now, insisting on honesty rather than strategic messaging, felt like reclaiming something essential that I'd gradually surrendered during our years together. David finally nodded, though his expression remained guarded. "We'll each handle communications as we see fit, but I hope you'll consider the potential impact on your own professional reputation before sharing details unnecessarily." The subtle, Warning might have intimidated me even a day earlier. Now, it simply confirmed the wisdom of my decision. My professional reputation is built on authentic work and genuine relationships, I said. It can withstand honesty. Can yours? Without waiting for his response, I turned and walked to our bedroom to pack what I would need for the immediate future. As I selected clothing and toiletries, I felt a strange mix of grief and liberation, mourning the partnership I had believed, and while feeling freed from pretenses I hadn't fully recognized until now. When I emerged with my suitcase 20 minutes later, David was sitting at the dining table, laptop open, already immersed in what appeared to be email. The scene struck me as both utterly familiar and completely revelatory. His default response to emotional complexity was to retreat into work, to re-establish control through professional action. "I've texted Jennifer," I said, pausing by the door. "She's coming to pick me up." He looked up, his expression now carefully composed. "I'll have my attorney contact you once I've secured representation. In the meantime, I suggest we limit communication to practical matters regarding the condo and finances." "Agreed," I said, realizing with a pang how seamlessly he had transitioned from husband to strategic adversary. Had the emotional connection I'd believed in ever been as substantial as I thought, or had it always been overshadowed by his calculation and positioning? "Sarah?" he said as I reached for the door handle, his voice softening slightly. "I did love you. In my way." The qualification spoke volumes. In my way. His way of loving had always been conditional, measured against strategic advantage, and carefully managed appearances. I had mistaken it for something more authentic, more equal, more genuinely connected. "I loved who I thought you were," I replied honestly. "I'm still coming to terms with who you actually are." The elevator ride to the lobby felt like descent from one life into another, leaving behind the carefully constructed world David and I had shared, and stepping into an uncertain but more authentic future. As the doors opened onto the elegant, marble foyer of our building, I spotted Jennifer already waiting outside, her reliable presence a beacon of stability in the shifting landscape of my life. She hurried forward to take my suitcase, her expression a mixture of concern and protective determination. "You okay?" "Not exactly," I admitted as we walked to her car. "But I will be." As we drove away from the gleaming high-rise that had been my home, I watched the Denver skyline recede in the side mirror. The city lights still sparkled with the same beauty they had yesterday, but my perspective had fundamentally changed, no longer viewing them from within the carefully framed picture of success David had created, but seeing them as part of a landscape of new possibilities I was only beginning to explore. "I told him I want a divorce," I said quietly as Jennifer navigated through evening traffic. She glanced over, mild surprise giving way to approval. "Good. What did he say?" "He called it an extreme reaction to a professional misstep," I replied, the corporate euphemism for his deception still grating. Then immediately shifted to managing the process and controlling the narrative. Jennifer snorted. Typical. No actual accountability or genuine remorse. "None," I confirmed. "Just strategy and damage control." "And how are you feeling about it all?" she asked more gently. I considered the question, searching for the right words to describe the complex emotional landscape I was traversing. "Like I'm waking up from a long, pleasant dream to discover the real world is both harsher and more vivid than I remembered." Jennifer nodded, understanding in her eyes. "The harsh part fades. The vivid part gets better." As we turned onto her tree-lined street in Wash Park, her small bungalow glowing with welcoming warmth against the deepening twilight, I felt a tentative sense of peace begin to settle over me. The path ahead would be complicated. Legally, financially, emotionally, but it would be authentically mine in a way my life with David had never truly been. My phone buzzed with a text notification. "Thomas again." The healthcare client just formally approved the campaign concept. Full green. Light for implementation. Congratulations, Sarah. Your vision is becoming reality. The timing of the message felt serendipitous, a reminder that my professional identity remained solid and valued, untarnished by David's attempts to co-opt it. Whatever came next in my personal life, this core aspect of myself remained intact and flourishing. Good news? Jennifer asked, noting my small smile as we pulled into her driveway. The best kind, I replied. A reminder that some parts of my life were never defined by my marriage. And those are the parts I get to build on now. As we entered her cozy home, so different from the sleek, staged elegance of the condo I'd shared with David, I felt the first real stirrings of forward momentum. The discovery of my name on that company letterhead had shattered what I thought was my life. But in doing so, it had revealed a truth I needed to see and created an opening for something more authentic to emerge from the fragments. Morning. Sunlight streamed through Jennifer's guest room curtains, casting warm patterns across unfamiliar walls. For a moment, I felt disoriented, my brain struggling to reconcile the cozy, slightly cluttered space with my usual waking surroundings. Then reality rushed back. The discovery of my name on Pinnacle letterhead, the confrontation at the board meeting, telling David I wanted a divorce. I reached for my phone, half expecting a barrage of messages from him. Explanations, justifications, attempts to reframe what had happened. Instead, there was just one text, sent at 5:47 a.m. Meeting with attorney this morning. Will have Melissa coordinate exchange of necessary items and documents. Please direct all communication through her until legal representation established on your side. Melissa was his executive assistant at Pinnacle, or had been before his suspension. The immediate delegation of our separation to an administrative process managed by a third party felt both coldly efficient and deeply sad. 5 years of marriage, reduced to a professionally managed exchange of necessary items. I set the phone aside and stretched, surprised to realize I had actually slept reasonably well. Perhaps the clarity of my decision had provided a kind of peace, despite the emotional turmoil of the preceding day. The aroma of coffee drifted from the kitchen. I pulled on a robe Jennifer had lent me. Mine was still hanging in the master bathroom at the condo, and padded down the hallway, following the scent. "Morning, warrior woman," Jennifer greeted me, sliding a steaming mug across the counter. "How are you feeling today?" I accepted the coffee gratefully. "Strangely okay, actually. Like I've finally diagnosed an illness I didn't know I had." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Terminal case of manipulative spouse. Treatment is radical excision." I smiled despite myself. Jennifer's ability to blend empathy with humor had been a cornerstone of our friendship since college. David's already shifted to formal communication protocols, everything going through his assistant now. "Of course he has," Jennifer said, rolling her eyes. "Heaven forbid he deal with the emotional messiness directly." "I need to find an attorney," I said, sipping my coffee. "Any recommendations?" Jennifer considered this as she refilled her own mug. "Actually, yes. Erin Caldwell. She specializes in high-asset divorces with professional entanglements. Smart, strategic, but not unnecessarily aggressive." "That sounds perfect," I said. "David will hire a shark, guaranteed. I don't want to match his combativeness, but I do need someone who can hold their own." "I'll text you her contact info," Jennifer promised. "Want breakfast before you head to work?" I glanced at the time, surprised to find it was already 7:30. I should actually get moving. I have a team meeting at 9 to kick off implementation of the healthcare campaign. "Look at you," Jennifer said admiringly, "handling your business like a boss even in the middle of personal chaos." "Work feels like the one area of my life that's still solidly mine," I explained. "The one place where I know who I am and what I'm doing." After a quick shower, I dressed in clothes Jennifer had picked up from my office yesterday. I kept a few spare outfits there for client emergencies. The navy pantsuit wasn't what I would have chosen for today's meeting, but it was professional and familiar, like armor for the day ahead. Denver's morning traffic moved sluggishly as Jennifer drove me to Altitude Creative's offices downtown. "Want me to pick you up after work?" she offered as we approached the building. "I should probably get my car from the condo parking garage," I said, thinking through the logistics of my new reality. "Maybe we could go together during lunch? I don't particularly want to run into David, but I can't avoid the condo forever." "Covert car extraction mission at noon," Jennifer confirmed. "I'll text you when I'm downstairs." The familiar rhythm of Altitude's morning routine felt comfortingly normal after the upheaval of the past 24 hours. Team members drifted in with coffee cups and casual greetings, settling at workstations and gathering in small clusters to discuss ongoing projects. I had just reached my office when Thomas appeared in the doorway, his expression unusually serious. "Sarah, do you have a moment?" "Of course," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "Everything okay with the healthcare account?" "The account's fine," he assured me, closing the door before taking a seat. "But there's been a development regarding Pinnacle Financial that you should be aware of." My stomach tightened. "What kind of development?" "I received a call from Graham Whitley this morning. Your husband has been terminated from Pinnacle, effective immediately." The news shouldn't have been shocking given yesterday's events, but hearing it stated so definitively still caused a jolt. "Terminated? Not just suspended pending investigation?" Thomas nodded grimly. "Whitley said the board reviewed additional documents overnight and determined there were, his words, multiple instances of misrepresentation that constituted clear violations of fiduciary responsibility." Meaning David didn't just forge my signature, I translated. He falsified other aspects of the acquisition proposal as well. "That appears to be the case," Thomas confirmed. "Whitley wanted to inform us directly because Pinnacle is concerned about potential professional blowback for Altitude. They want to assure us that they value our agency relationship and understand you were an unwitting victim in this situation." The corporate language, "unwitting victim," felt strangely distancing, transforming a deeply personal betrayal into a professional risk management scenario. Yet I appreciated Whitley's direct communication and apparent commitment to maintaining clear boundaries between David's actions and Altitude's ongoing relationship with Pinnacle. "Did Whitley share any specifics about the other misrepresentations?" I asked, wondering just how extensive David's deception had been. "No details," Thomas replied, "but he mentioned that Catherine Baxter, their governance chair, would like to speak with you directly if you're willing. Not about your husband's situation specifically, but about ensuring your professional reputation remains untarnished through this process." I considered this request carefully. My initial instinct was to create complete separation from Pinnacle, to treat the company as an extension of David and the deception he had perpetrated. But professional reputation management required more nuanced thinking. "I'll speak with her," I decided. Better to address any concerns directly than allow speculation to fill the void. Thomas nodded, seemingly relieved. "I think that's wise." For what it's worth, Whitley struck me as genuinely concerned about maintaining appropriate professional boundaries while addressing a difficult situation. After Thomas left, I sat at my desk absorbing this new development. David had lost his position at Pinnacle, the career he had valued enough to risk fraud and forgery to advance. The acquisition deal he had compromised our marriage to secure had likely collapsed or been fundamentally restructured without his involvement. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, satisfaction that there were consequences for his actions, certainly, but also a strange sadness for the man who had tied his identity so completely to professional success that he would sacrifice integrity and trust to maintain it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. Ms. Miller, this is Melissa Armstrong, Mr. Reynolds' assistant. He has asked me to coordinate retrieval of your personal items from the condo. Please advise on preferred time and whether you wish to be present or prefer a third-party service. The formality was jarring. Mr. Reynolds rather than David. The condo rather than our home. Even more unsettling was the rapid shift from marital partners to procedural adversaries, managing our separation through intermediaries and carefully worded messages. I responded with equal professionalism. I'll be collecting my car from the garage at noon today. I can gather essential personal items at that time. Please inform Mr. Reynolds so he can ensure privacy if desired. The exchange left me feeling hollow. Was this how quickly 7 years together dissolved into polite, distant texts about logistics and property? My team arrived for the 9 o'clock meeting, their energy and enthusiasm for the healthcare campaign, providing welcome distraction from my personal turmoil. For the next 2 hours, I immersed myself in creative direction and implementation planning, finding genuine pleasure in the collaborative process and the transformation of concepts into concrete deliverables. Sarah, this campaign framework is brilliant, said Maya, our digital strategy lead as we wrapped up. The way you've integrated preventative care messaging into aspirational lifestyle content, it feels revolutionary for healthcare marketing. The client practically glowed when you presented the user journey, added Erin, our UX designer. I've never seen a healthcare executive actually get excited about a marketing approach before. Their praise felt especially meaningful against the backdrop of recent events. Here, in this conference room with my team, my professional identity was intact and valued, untarnished by David's attempt to appropriate it for his own purposes. It's a team win, I told them sincerely. Each of you brought essential expertise to this concept. Now we just need to execute it flawlessly. As the team dispersed, my phone buzzed again. Jennifer confirming our noon mission to retrieve my car. I gathered what I would need for the rest of the day, trying to prepare mentally for returning to the condo, a space that had transformed overnight from home to contested territory. Ready for Operation Car Liberation? Jennifer asked when I slid into her passenger seat at 12 sharp. As ready as I can be, I replied, anxiety building as we turned toward the high-rise where David and I had lived. Melissa texted that David won't be there, but it still feels strange going back. We'll be quick, Jennifer promised. Grab your car, some clothes, essential documents. Everything else can wait until the lawyers sort things out. The building's familiar facade loomed ahead, glass and steel gleaming in the midday sun. The doorman nodded in recognition as we entered the lobby, giving no indication that he knew anything had changed in the past 24 hours. Mrs. Miller, he greeted me. Haven't seen you since yesterday morning. Just picking up my car, Carl, I explained, moving toward the elevator to avoid further conversation. The condo was eerily silent when we entered, exactly as I had left it the night before, except for one striking difference. The photos were gone. Every framed picture of David and me, from our wedding, vacations, charity events, had been removed from shelves, walls, and tabletops, leaving conspicuous empty spaces throughout the living area. That's chilling, Jennifer observed, noting my stunned expression. Like he's erasing the marriage already. The systematic removal felt deliberate and message-laden, a visual representation of David's approach to our separation. Clean, efficient, without messy emotional residue. The home we had shared for 4 years now looked like a hastily rearranged stage set. Let's just get what I need and go, I said, moving purposefully toward the master bedroom. There, more evidence of David's methodical approach awaited. My closet door stood open, revealing that approximately half of my clothing had been packed into 3 large suitcases arranged neatly at the foot of the bed. A manila envelope rested on top of the largest case, my name written in Melissa's neat handwriting. Inside was a typed inventory of the packed items and a note. Ms. Miller, Mr. Reynolds requested I pack essential clothing and personal items for your convenience. If additional items are required, please provide a list and arrangements will be made for their delivery. Keys to your vehicle are on the kitchen counter. He had his assistant pack your things? Jennifer's voice reflected the disbelief I felt. I don't even have words. Efficient, I supplied flatly. David values efficiency. The impersonal handling of my most personal possessions, my clothes, jewelry, toiletries, by someone who worked for David felt like yet another boundary violation, though of a different nature than the signature forgery. He had once again made unilateral decisions about my belongings, my space, my autonomy. I need to check something, I said, moving to the home office that adjoined, our bedroom. My desk appeared untouched, but the filing cabinet where we kept important personal documents stood open, several folders conspicuously missing. A quick inventory confirmed my suspicion. Financial statements, property documents, insurance policies, all gone. He's taken all the financial records, I told Jennifer, who had followed me into the office. Everything related to our assets and accounts. Her expression hardened. You need to call Aaron, today. This is exactly why you need solid representation. I nodded, the reality of what we were facing settling in more concretely. This wasn't just an emotional separation. It was becoming a strategic contest over resources and narrative control. Let me check one more thing, I said, moving to the built-in safe in the office closet. David had insisted on installing it when we moved in, citing the need to secure valuable documents and jewelry. I entered the code, our wedding date, ironically, and pulled the handle. It opened to reveal nothing. Completely empty. The additional copies of our marriage certificate, property deeds, stock certificates, and my grandmother's jewelry that we had stored there, all gone. He's cleared out the safe too, I said, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. Everything of value or importance. Jennifer took a deep breath, lawyer mode fully engaged now. Document everything. Take photos of the empty safe, the missing files, the removed photos. Note exactly what's missing as best you can remember. As I followed her advice, methodically photographing evidence of David's preemptive moves, I felt an odd detachment from the space that had been my home. The condo had always reflected David's aesthetic more than mine. Minimalist, strategic, designed to impress. Now, with personal touches removed and closets half emptied, it felt like what it perhaps had always been. A carefully staged setting rather than an authentic home. I think I have everything I need for now, I said, pocketing my car keys from the counter. Let's get these suitcases down to my car and get out of here. As we loaded the last of the luggage into my trunk 30 minutes later, I felt a weight lifting. Not just the physical burden of dealing with possessions, but the psychological, one of returning to a space that no longer felt like mine. Where to now? Jennifer asked as we stood in the garage. Back to altitude? I checked the time, nearly 1 o'clock. Actually, I have a better idea. I need to talk to a divorce attorney, and I'm not in the right headspace for work this afternoon. Let me text Thomas and then follow you back to your place. After sending a brief message explaining that I needed the afternoon to handle personal matters, I slid into my own car for the first time since everything had changed. The familiar leather seats and lingering scent of the vanilla air freshener I preferred created an odd sense of continuity. This small personal space had remained untouched by the upheaval of the past 24 hours. Back at Jennifer's house, I called Aaron Caldwell's office and was surprised to be offered an appointment that same afternoon. We've had a cancellation at 3, the receptionist explained. Ms. Caldwell has been briefed by Jennifer Ward and can see you then if that works. The efficiency of Jennifer's networking impressed, but didn't surprise me. Her ability to mobilize resources had always been one of her greatest strengths. Perfect, I said, accepting the appointment. I'll be there. Aaron Caldwell's office occupied a beautifully restored Victorian in Denver's Capitol Hill neighborhood, its professional, gravitas softened by architectural charm. The interior continued this balance, clearly a high-end law practice, but with warm lighting and comfortable seating that avoided the intimidating coldness of typical legal offices. Erin herself embodied a similar duality. In her early 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair and sharp eyes, she projected competence and authority tempered by genuine warmth. She greeted me with a firm handshake and direct gaze. "Sarah, thank you for coming in on such short notice. Jennifer gave me a general overview of your situation, though I'm sure there are many details to fill in." "That's putting it mildly," I admitted, as I settled into the chair across from her desk. "I'm still processing everything myself." "Start wherever feels most natural," she suggested. "The legal implications will emerge as we talk." For the next 30 minutes, I outlined the events of the past 2 days, discovering my name on Pinnacle Letterhead, confronting David, the board meeting revelations, his termination, and this morning's discovery of missing financial documents. And emptied safe. Erin listened attentively, occasionally making notes, but mostly maintaining eye contact, her expression thoughtful, but not judgmental. "So to summarize," she said when I finished, "your husband forged your signature on corporate documents, misrepresented your professional involvement to his company, lost his position as a result, and has now begun removing financial records and valuables from your shared home." "That covers the highlights," I confirmed, the sequence sounding even more surreal when presented so succinctly. "And you're certain about pursuing divorce rather than separation or attempted reconciliation?" she asked, not pushing but ensuring clarity. "Absolutely certain," I said without hesitation. The forgery and misrepresentation revealed fundamental issues of respect and trust that can't be repaired. And his actions since then, managing our separation through his assistant, removing financial documents, emptying the safe, only confirm the pattern. Erin nodded, seemingly satisfied with my conviction. "Then let's talk about immediate priorities and longer-term strategy." She outlined a clear approach: emergency filings to prevent further removal of assets, formal documentation of what had already been taken, forensic accounting to establish complete financial picture, and strategic negotiation parameters based on Colorado's equitable distribution standards. "The timing is actually advantageous in one sense," she noted. "His termination from Pinnacle creates potential leverage. He'll likely be motivated to resolve this quickly and quietly to avoid further professional damage. David values his reputation above almost everything," I confirmed. "He'll want this handled with minimal public attention." "That said," Erin continued, her expression serious, "his actions suggest someone who prioritizes control and strategic advantage. The removal of financial documents indicates he's preparing for conflict rather than cooperative resolution." "That's very much David's approach," I agreed. "He views most situations as competitions to be won rather than problems to be solved collaboratively." "Then we need to be prepared for aggressive tactics while maintaining the higher ground," Erin said decisively. "I propose we file immediately to establish legal parameters that prevent further financial maneuvering, then approach settlement negotiations from a position of protected strength rather than reactive defense." Her strategy resonated with my own instincts. David respected strength and preparation. Demonstrating both might actually facilitate a cleaner resolution than attempting a more conciliatory approach that he would likely interpret as weakness to be exploited. "There's another element to consider," I added. "The forgery issue extends beyond our marriage into professional territory. His actions potentially damaged my reputation in ways that have career implications." Erin leaned forward slightly, interest sharpening her gaze. "That raises potential claims outside standard divorce proceedings, professional defamation, identity theft, even fraud with financial damages if your career opportunities were impacted. I don't want to pursue criminal charges, I clarified, quickly. Despite everything, I don't want to destroy him, but I need protection from any continuing or future misuse of my professional identity. Understood, Aaron said, making another note. We can incorporate strong non-disparagement and professional protection clauses in the settlement without pursuing separate criminal complaints. Those potential claims become negotiating leverage rather than actual legal actions. By the end of our 90-minute consultation, I felt simultaneously exhausted and relieved. The path ahead would be complex and likely contentious, but having a clear strategy and experienced guidance made it feel manageable rather than overwhelming. We'll file the emergency orders tomorrow morning, Aaron confirmed as we concluded. In the meantime, document everything. Maintain professional communications in all exchanges with David or his representatives, and try to establish a routine that supports your well-being through this process. As I drove back to Jennifer's house afterward, Denver's late afternoon traffic flowing around me, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed in just 2 days. The relationship I had believed would be my lifetime partnership was ending. The home I had thought was mine was now a contested asset. The future I had planned with David was being dismantled and reconstructed in real time. Yet alongside the undeniable grief and disruption ran a surprising current of determination and even optimism. The woman who had discovered her name on unauthorized company letterhead was not the same woman now navigating rush hour traffic with a clear legal strategy and renewed commitment to her own authentic path. My phone rang through the car's Bluetooth system. Catherine Baxter from Pinnacle's board. Ms. Miller, her crisp voice filled the car after I accepted the call. Thank you for taking my call. I understand this is an extremely difficult time, and I'll be brief. I appreciate that, I said, curious about her purpose in contacting me directly. First, I want to formally apologize on behalf of Pinnacle Financial for the misuse of your name, signature, and professional reputation in our corporate documents. The board is implementing measures to ensure nothing similar ever occurs again. The apology was unexpectedly meaningful, an acknowledgement of the professional violation that had been somewhat overshadowed by the personal betrayal it represented. Thank you, I said sincerely. That means a great deal to me. Second, she continued, we've completed our initial review of the Eastern Division acquisition materials. The marketing integration strategy attributed to you was substantive and potentially valuable, despite its fraudulent presentation. I waited, unsure where she was heading with this observation. Pinnacle is legally obligated to compensate for intellectual property utilized in corporate planning, even under these unusual circumstances, Catherine explained. Our counsel has prepared a proposal for appropriate financial recognition of the methodologies incorporated into our documents, separate from any personal matters between you and Mr. Reynolds. The offer caught me completely off guard. Ms. Baxter, I appreciate the gesture, but I didn't actually develop those strategies for Pinnacle. The core methodologies were clearly derived from your published work at Altitude, she countered. While the specific application to our Eastern Division was fabricated, the fundamental approach has value that Pinnacle benefited from and may continue to utilize in modified form. The professional recognition implicit in her offer, that my work had genuine value independent of David's manipulation, felt unexpectedly validating. I'll need to consult with my attorney about any such arrangement, I said, navigating both the legal and ethical complexities of the situation. But I appreciate Pinnacle's commitment to appropriate professional boundaries. Of course, Catherine agreed. Have your counsel contact our legal department directly. We're committed to resolving this aspect separately from any personal matters between you and Mr. Reynolds. As I ended the call and pulled onto Jennifer's street, I felt a strange sense of coming full circle. What had begun with the unauthorized use of my professional identity was now evolving into a formal recognition of its legitimate value, on my terms, with proper boundaries and compensation. The symmetry felt fitting, almost restorative. David had attempted to appropriate my professional worth without consent. Now Pinnacle was acknowledging it with formal respect and proper process. Jennifer was waiting on her porch, 2 glasses of wine already poured. "How did it go with Erin?" she called as I approached. "Really well," I said, accepting the offered glass gratefully. "She's filing emergency orders tomorrow to prevent further asset movement. And she has a clear strategy for the broader process." "That woman is a force of nature," Jennifer said approvingly. "Did you tell her about the empty safe and missing documents?" "Everything," I confirmed. She wasn't surprised. Apparently, it's a common initial move in high-asset divorces, trying to create information asymmetry from the start. "Classic David," Jennifer muttered, always positioning for advantage. We settled onto her porch swing, the early evening air carrying the first hints of approaching autumn. Traffic sounds from the nearby main road mingled with neighborhood noises. Children playing, dogs barking, the ordinary rhythm of lives continuing predictably while mine underwent seismic reshaping. "Catherine Baxter called me on the way home," I said, still processing the conversation. "Pinnacle wants to compensate me for the professional methodologies David incorporated into their acquisition plans." Jennifer's eyebrows rose. "That's unexpected and actually pretty ethical of them." "It feels like reclamation somehow," I mused. "My work being recognized properly, with boundaries and consent, after being misused." "Full circle moment," Jennifer agreed, clinking her glass against mine. "From identity theft to identity affirmation." The phrase captured something essential about the journey of the past 2 days. What had begun as a profound violation of my autonomy was evolving into an opportunity to establish stronger boundaries and clearer self-definition. "I keep thinking about that moment when I first saw my name on that letterhead," I said, watching. The sunset paint Denver's sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. How disorienting and wrong it felt to see my identity used without my knowledge. But in a strange way, that violation has forced me to reclaim parts of myself I didn't even realize had become compromised. Jennifer nodded, understanding in her eyes. Sometimes it takes a dramatic rupture to reveal the subtle erosions that preceded it. As darkness settled over the neighborhood and porch lights blinked on up and down the street, I felt an unexpected moment of peace amid the upheaval. The path ahead would be challenging, legally, financially, emotionally, but it was authentically mine in a way my life with David had gradually ceased to be. My name on that unauthorized letterhead had shattered the illusion of my marriage, but in doing so, it had created space for something more genuine to emerge from the fragments. Not just a new chapter, but a truer story. One written in my own hand, with my own signature, representing my authentic self. 1 year later, I stood in my new office at Altitude Creative, the words Executive Director freshly painted on the door. The divorce had finalized 3 months ago, with David agreeing to a surprisingly reasonable settlement after Erin discovered Rachel had been more than just his assistant. They'd been romantically involved for nearly a year before our anniversary. The revelation explained so much: the canceled dinner, the strange hours, and ultimately, his desperate attempt to derail my career progression. The irony wasn't lost on me. His scheme to use my identity had ultimately led me to reclaim it more fully than I'd ever imagined. The healthcare campaign had won 2 industry awards, securing my promotion and transforming Altitude's market position. I'd even accepted a limited consulting arrangement with Pinnacle, on my terms, with my signature, properly compensated. As I arranged my new desk, I placed a small framed quote where I'd see it daily. "The moment someone tries to dim your light is the moment you need to shine brightest." My phone buzzed. "Jennifer, reminding me about dinner with my brother who was visiting from Vancouver. Life continued, authentic and unscripted, my name now representing exactly who I was meant to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories. Right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.